call to order the meeting of the Portsmouth City Council. Welcome, citizens, to our meeting. In accordance with Governor Ralph Northam's declaration of a state of emergency due to the novel coronavirus Executive Order 51 on March 12, 2020, and the local declaration of emergency ratified by the Portsmouth City Council, and due to the coronavirus pandemic, which is continuing in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This called meeting of the Portsmouth City Council is being held by video conference on the 23rd day of March 2021 without a quorum present in the City Council chamber in order to reduce the likely spread of the coronavirus in accordance with City Council Ordinance 2020-21 and 2020-102. Each council member is participating from their home or other remote location, and I am in the City Council chamber. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Here.
Mr. Battle?
Here.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Here.
Mr. Moody?
Here.
Dr. Whitaker?
Present.
Mr. Woodard?
Here.
Mayor Glover?
Here. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes.
Members of council, we have for our consideration the minutes of a virtual call meeting on March 9th, 2021, and a virtual regular meeting on March 9th, 2021. Is there any discussion of the minutes? If not, we're in need of a motion and second.
Move adoption. Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Battle?
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moody?
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yes.
Mr. Woodard?
Yes.
Mayor Glover?
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, would you please read our speaker statement?
Yes, sir. City Council rules require a limit of up to 5 minutes to speak. While speakers have an opportunity to address council on matters of public concern, all comments should be made in a manner that respects the seriousness of the forum and should not be made in a belligerent, sarcastic, or demeaning fashion. All remarks shall be directed to the City Council as a body rather than any particular member of the City Council, staff, or the audience, and should be limited to matters that only the Portsmouth City Council can influence. A speaker who fails to observe this basic rule of decorum will be deemed out of order and not allowed to conclude his or her comments.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes,
We've come to public hearing item number 21-98. And Madam Clerk, please read the public hearing.
yes, sir. Public hearing on a proposed adoption by the City Council of a resolution to authorize the city to contract a debt and issue general obligation bonds of the city or notes in anticipation thereof in a principal amount estimated not to exceed $42,400,000 to finance finance the costs of the city's capital improvement program, as City Council may amend it from time to time, including the 1, replacement of a portion of the Churchland Bridge, 2, repair and replacement of sections of the Portsmouth seawall, 3, installation of the city fiber network project, and 4, upgraded installation of the city's public safety radio system, and the cost of issuing the bonds.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Pace, do you have a presentation?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, if you'd like, I have Mr. David Rose here from Davenport to answer the questions that you might have relative to these obligation bonds.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Mr. Pace. Madam Clerk, are there any registered speakers?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mark Godoldie-Yutrovsky.
Mr. Godot Yutrovsky, welcome, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council and neighbors. I'm happy to hear that Mr. Rose is on the line. What I'm disconcerted about in the discussion of this item is that council typically receives a presentation from the city's financial advisors before taking up matters of this sort. Historically, the practice has been in Portsmouth to go to the bond market every other year. And there are some significant items that have been presented by the school system in your joint meeting that are not accounted for in this present proposal. To name two rather big ticket items, the replacement of Churchland Middle School and a new middle school proposed when you met with your counterparts on the school board. So if you are contemplating funding either of those projects or both of those projects, I would think that you would not want to go to the bond market before you had set the stage. In addition, I recall that back during the Great Recession, as we were coming out, there were infrastructure projects that were funded by federal money. We built Simonsdale Elementary School using one of those funding mechanisms. And the reason we were able to qualify for what to us was a no interest loan was that we were shovel ready when the money was being allocated to projects across the country. Now, the current administration is also talking about infrastructure projects. And I think that based on past precedent, we should be doing our best to be close to shovel ready in case there is a repeat of that sort of funding mechanism in conjunction with a new infrastructure bill. So I question our taking up this matter at this time without having addressed those two capital expenditure projects that seem to be important to the schools without even having a conversation regarding the possible inclusion of those in our current bond issue. So my request to you is that you consider deferring this item. I know that time is of the essence on many occasions when you're dealing with bonds, but I don't believe that the pandemic is going to end in the next couple of weeks. Therefore, I don't expect what some economists have discussed as the post-pandemic rebound is going to take us by surprise and put us in an adverse interest situation. So I think we could spend a little more time in preparation mode before we actually put our offer out into the bond market. Thank you very much.
You're on mute, Mayor.
You're muted.
You're muted, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Madam Clerk, are there any other registered? Thank you, Mr. Godot Yutrovsky. Madam Clerk, are there any other registered speakers?
No, sir.
Ms. Smith.
Yes, sir, Dr. Whitaker.
Yeah, I do have two questions. For the items that are listed, the four items, are there any numerical figures associated with each one of these that we can present to the public tonight as to when we're saying 42.4 million, how is that being allocated across each project?
Yes, sir. We have with us our advisor, Mr. Rose, here with us. If you would allow for
Sure.
him to come forward.
Good evening, Dr. Whitaker and members of council, Mr. Mayor. To answer Dr. Whitaker's question, let me go down that list if I could. Churchland Bridge is the largest piece. That is $7.675 million. Seawall reinforcement is $5.74 million. City fiber network is $4 million. Public safety radio is $4 million. And the balance is miscellaneous projects, all of which are under the $4 million because they are less than the 10% of the size that the public hearing is asked to approve. And that is how it is required to be shown under Virginia law.
Okay, can we get a breakdown of what those miscellaneous projects are? We may have to delay the vote on this, but I would like to see what they are, and also take into account the federal monies that may be available, as well as the school requests.
So Dr. Whitaker, I can certainly ask the staff through your acting city manager to get you that breakdown for everyone.
Right.
And that
So-
would be, we could do
So
that.
as I'm looking at this, then so we have, I'm just adding up real quick, what, 12, 16, about 20, about half of this is accounted for with the bigger projects, and then 20 million is in the smaller miscellaneous projects that we don't have listed here.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yeah. And so, so I would want to make sure we're clear and also presenting to the public what these miscellaneous projects are. And the second question, the 42.4 million, what's the, is there a cap amount that we can go up to that wouldn't interfere with our credit or bond rating?
So first off, the 42.4 million was determined by virtue of your existing, already approved multi-year capital improvement program. And a vast amount of these projects are underway, perhaps have even been expended or in the midst of projects. So that's the point I'd make there. To answer your question directly in terms of how much you could do, you may recall when I made the presentation back in January, you have several what I'll call governors, if you would, that limit the amount that you can do. I don't believe you're asking what your legal limitation is, because that is several $100 million, and it would be far more than anything you could financially, as you know, afford in terms of just sheer dollars. And that is, for everyone's benefit, that is a limitation based upon 10%, not to exceed, of your real estate assessed value. So that number would be huge. It would be a very large jump from where you are now. To answer your question, Dr. Whitaker, I would have to go back, and I can do this, and I can get that within a day or so, and give you a sense of that. It does change on a regular basis within reason. And the reason I say that is because you're constantly paying down debt through a given year, and the assessed values and your expenditures, the ratios, if you would, that we compare them to, are always changing. But I do think what you're looking for, we can give you a general order of magnitude, and that's not a difficult thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other registered speakers, Madam Clerk?
No, sir.
And Mr. Mayor, just one question.
Yes.
The issue of the funding that localities may or may not be getting from the COVID-19, how is that impacting Portsmouth? Do we have any idea yet how that's going to impact our funding?
If you'd like me to, Mr. Mayor, I could try to answer that, Dr. Whitaker. We know that the city is supposed to get in 2 lump sums, one coming, half of it, roughly in about 55 or 60 days, and the other half coming supposedly within 12 months of this general time frame. And those 2 lump sums have yet to be properly defined by the federal government. And as a result of that, the federal treasury has indicated nationally and publicly that they said this last week, so I'll just say what they said, within 60 days, as of about a week ago, so roughly between 50 and 60 days from now, we are supposed to hear, we nationally, about specifically how those monies can be used. They have given some guidance, but that guidance is very, very wide open and is subject to interpretation. For example, they have said that it can be used for water, sewer, and broadband, but they did not specify how, for example, it can be used within those categories. Meaning, going to your question about debt, can we use it for debt service for those projects, or do they have to go directly for those projects? The regulations so far or the legislation that was approved is silent on that. And so there is a formal series of requests to the federal treasury for those kinds of questions. So we cannot at this point, Dr. Whitaker, know with any certainty or comfort that it can be used a certain way. They've given some other indications as well, but again, that's very amorphous.
So do we know about approximately when we'll be getting those directives from the Treasury?
Yes, within about 60 days.
Okay.
Meaning not within, about 60 days from now or last week is what they said. So expect it in about 2 months.
So would it behoove us to wait until we get that information before we incur this amount of debt?
That's a great question. I don't think so. Number one, these projects are, in some instances, monies that have already gone out the door, already in progress, and your finance staff can give you some more of that as a follow-up to what you asked as well. But at the same time, we may find that some of those projects, whatever dollars we do get, that could always be helpful. If it's allowed for projects like this, then it could be helpful for, let's say, paying down or not having to borrow as much in the next wave of your capital program. So I think our thinking right now is, while interest rates have gone up a little bit over the last maybe 3 weeks, we're still hovering near multi-generation lows. And on top of that, if the interest rates hold in this general range, we have the ability to save several millions of dollars on existing debt that we have recommended to refund, simply to lower the interest rates, to bring the payments down.
Yeah. So my concern too is that if we use these funds. We haven't taken into account any of the school capital improvement requests with this bond obligation that's going out, which is basically not restrictive. The bond that we're putting out now is non-restrictive, whereas the federal monies may be restrictive and would forego us being able to possibly to have used these funds towards the school's capital improvement.
I'm not sure I follow.
Well,
usually.
the bond obligation that we are looking to vote on today would go towards these specific projects.
Yes, sir.
None of which includes the school's capital improvement.
Not that I know of, unless, again, that's where I would look to the finance department. There may be some school-related that I'm not aware of, and they may be part of that 20 million or so that makes up that basket of smaller percentage.
So
I don't know the answer to that.
Let's say if it is not a part of the miscellaneous, then we've already allocated these funds towards these projects, not knowing whether the funds we get in from the federal will give us the latitude to address the school's capital improvement. So the funds that we have now are basically non-restrictive. The funds that come from the COVID relief, we don't know, may have some restrictions on them that we could not use to address the school's capital improvement. And so now that we have non-restrictive funds, that's why I said, would it behoove us, if we're going to try to address the school's capital improvement, to see whether these funds from the federal are restrictive or not? Because if they are restrictive, then we would have foregone the opportunity to apply this bond issue to the capital improvement of the schools.
I see where you're coming from. So here's the interesting thing about these funds that we're asking you to consider approving in a public hearing. These are projects that you have already designated either need to be done or are being done as we speak. And so as a result, you also have school-related projects that are part of your overall multi-year capital improvement program. It's just that these major projects that I've listed for you, those are, again, in some form of process, and as a result, there is a need at this time to actually raise these bond funds. The other thing I should have mentioned is that the monies that you're expected to get from the Stimulus Act, some of those monies are also for schools. Some of those are directly for schools. I don't pretend to know exactly what number that is, what amount. And we also, going to your point, we just don't know if some of those dollars can be used towards capital for schools. We just don't know that yet. But hopefully, in 60 days, we will have a better handle on that. I also don't know what the breakdown is, because this is all evolving, as you know, in terms of what the federal government has just passed with regard to how many dollars are going to you, meaning the general funds or the utility funds of the city itself, versus how many are going to the school board side of things.
Okay.
Don't know yet.
Okay. So in light of our discussion and the uncertainties, you still recommend that we go forward with?
Yes, because again, I don't know if Ms. Terry is available as your finance director in terms of answering that question. She would know that better. But some of these projects are already in progress and really are necessary irrespective of the stimulus funds. And in fact, the way I would look at this, Dr. Whitaker and others, is those stimulus funds, to a large extent, separate from the CARES Act monies that you got last year, really these monies to a very large degree will be additive to anything that you want to do. They're not going to be taking away from your debt capacity or your wherewithal. I'd like to make that point to the citizens and to you and others. This is really additive and positive to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, first of all, for coming. Um, what is the downside of not approving our bonds at this time? Is there a downside?
There very well could be a significant downside, and that is because in your approved CIP, you moved forward with a number of projects, including a number of those smaller projects that don't yet have definition in what I'm giving you. And so we need to be very careful that we're not in breach of contracts and things of that nature. If indeed, for example, take the Churchland Bridge, the largest such piece of that, you may have already let certain contracts. That money may be a reimbursement to you because money you've already done. I'm not saying it is. I don't know the exact nature of it.
Yes, sir.
But that said, what I worry about here is that if you're not funding that in a timely manner, then what we might have to do is look to our reserves, which are already stressed because of the, again, the timing of getting repaid by citizens given the COVID and what have you. So I don't want to see this hurt our overall credit standing and our cash flows as a city. So that said, plus while rates could of course be lower a month or two from now, they are ticking up a little bit and they're still very good. But I would like to be in a mode where you are to try as best as possible to secure the money as quickly as possible. And also, like I said, do this simultaneous with any potential refundings to save money. So that would be our recommendation, Mr. Mayor, is to not delay. But again, certainly to get the answers to Mr. Whitaker, Dr. Whitaker, and everyone else within a few days. Certainly to do that as well, though, and to promise that.
Thank you, sir.
If Mr. Rowe, if your analysis comes back that there is a higher amount, would that be something that would be too late to take into account after we vote tonight if it shows that it would be feasible to add on additional projects?
Great question, Dr. Whitaker. So the answer to that is a couple-fold. Number one, typically, how you have done it and your colleagues in other cities and counties is you consider borrowing money through your capital improvement program that you pass. So that's usually the process that's involved. I don't pretend to know what your legal requirements are in terms of being able to set a public hearing to do subsequent or additional debt. I don't know if it has to be through an approved or an amended capital program. I would defer there to your legal counsel. But the point here is that you certainly could do additional debt, shortly thereafter of doing this debt, if that was the will of the council, and again within the right legal steps.
I was just concerned if it would be financially feasible for us to do that. Would it be within our capacity?
Great question. So the financial feasible side, there's really two parts to that. One is the legal and how long that takes, but the second part is the affordability.
Right.
Meaning, of course, let's just go with me. Let's say you say, well, let's do another $50 million that wasn't planned for. We could give you what that, in effect, debt service would be. That would probably be roughly, if it's $50 million, for example, it'd probably be an extra annual $3 million of additional debt service, something along those lines. And that you'd want to, of course, make sure that your budgets are able to afford that and factor that in. Um, I think if I'm answering your question the way you're asking, if I am, Dr. Whitaker, the answer is by doing this debt, this doesn't preclude you from going back and doing some more debt or speeding up your other capital program. It's just a matter of is it affordable and just going through the legal channels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Battle, sir, you have the floor.
You said that the interest rates were ticking up. So what is your idea of the interest rate that we'll be receiving?
So we are looking at borrowing the bulk of your debt as 20-year fixed rate debt. Our estimate at this time is that that debt would be roughly around 2.5%. But again, it is subject to the markets, Councilman Battle. So again, we as your advisor, the way this works is we put that out, as we say, competitively to all the banks and all the brokerages, and whoever provides the city of Portsmouth with the lowest interest rate ends up winning, meaning they get to provide you those monies.
That's Councilwoman Lucas Burke. You have the floor, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, sir, for the presentation. I guess my question is the tickler list of projects that we're doing. Is this an annual? I guess my question is the amount that we ask annually, is it dependent on the projects that we're on our table, or are we set to a certain amount that we can go and ask for annually when we go to ask for bond rate?
Appreciate that, Councilman Burke. Basically, it is based upon your approved capital program and the estimate, if you would, of when you expect to either spend those monies because you're borrowing on a tax exempt basis, which means you have certain restrictions for how far out you can borrow that money. In addition, it's also based upon repaying the city for monies that you've expended, because what we try to do is go to the marketplace roughly, once every 12 to 18 months or thereabouts. It's just a matter of how quickly you expect to spend the monies on those capital projects that you have. As you know, some things get spent faster than others. So we sometimes need to borrow that type of money quicker. So that's really the answer for that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Madam Clerk, are there any other speakers, or is it? Are there any other speakers for the public hearing? I think I asked.
Yes, sir. No, there's no additional speakers.
Well, this public hearing is now closed, and City Council will consider this item later in the agenda. We've now come to City Manager's Report. Item 21-99. Madam Clerk, would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, sir. An ordinance accepting with appreciation a donation in the amount of $200 from Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, Inc., and appropriating said funds to the FY 2021 Grants Fund for use by the Department of Social Services for foster care program.
Council members, we are needing a motion and second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. We now come to item 21-100. And Madam Clerk, please read the ordinance we're considering.
Yes, sir. An ordinance appropriating the necessary funds to implement the general fund and risk management fund of the FY 2021 Portsmouth Public Schools budget for the fourth quarter of fiscal year 2021.
Council members, we are in need of a motion and second.
Move for approval. Second.
And Madam Clerk, were there any speakers for this item?
No, sir.
Council members, is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. Madam Clerk, we've now come to item 21-101. And would you please read the ordinance?
Yes, sir. An ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale of City of Portsmouth, Virginia general obligation bonds to include new money bonds in an original principal amount of not to exceed $42,400,000 and refunding bonds.
Council members, we are in need of a motion and second.
Move adoption.
Second.
Madam Clerk, I believe we have one speaker,
Yes.
and that is our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Mimi Terry.
Hi, hi, good evening, Council. Dr. Whitaker, I just wanted an opportunity to expand on the question that you asked regarding what are the dollars being used for in regards to this bond. I have the projects that we've identified to receive reimbursement on. So I have the Churchland Bridge replacement, the Twin Creek Bridge replacement. I have the Ballard Avenue Hyman Street improvements, the Effingham Street improvements, Burton's Point, Lincoln Park redevelopment. I got High Street in Crawford. I have the Control Bridge repairs, Midtown Corridor, City Hall plumbing system, City Hall 801 Crawford Street. I have Portside Festival site, public safety facilities plan, upgrade fuel stations. I have Department of Social Services HVAC replacement. We have contingencies there for the new fire station, waste management building. We have the control roof replacement. We have control various building renovations. We have the Sportsplex building. We have a seawall reinforcement, city fiber network, County Street garage replacement, election system and software. We have permitting system replacement, public safety new radio system, Command E911, backup vehicles. We have city garage fleet. We have roof coating. We have Churchland High HVAC. We have Churchland Academy parking lot. We have the bus loop.
Ms. Terry. Ms. Smith.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Dr.
Before you go through that long list, it's probably better you just, if you email that to us, because I was interested in the amounts that have been allocated for each project.
Okay, and I can just tell you those projects without finishing, even with the Mount Herman roof replacement, come to 40.4 million.
That that those individual projects?
All these projects plus the projects that, the four big projects all equal, yes, sir, 40.4 million.
Yeah, because we're voting on 42 point. Well, that's including fees and all too. Oh, okay. Um, so as far as the school capital improvement request, how does that fit within our plans?
So because we actually hold all of the debt for the schools and any replacement definitely comes through us, there's a couple of projects up here. And I also want to because this is that time of year, we just did $1.3 million in Churchland. And then we did another 1.3 since since December to now. They had a stage replacement, HVAC replacement, and some other things and bathroom replacement that we just did on those. So I'm sorry.
No, I was listening.
Oh, okay.
The other school projects.
Okay. So the other school projects, I mean, when I look at this, there's 917,000 for Mount Herman preschool roof replacement alone. And then with school improvements, HVAC system replacement, bus loops, that's roughly 300,000.
Well, I guess we have to have some future discussions on how the capital improvement plan will implement the school's requests as far as the middle school, and there's been some discussion about a career school. So that's a subsequent discussion that council will have. Yeah.
And anytime you like, I don't mind sitting down with you and just going over this information or any of the council members through the interim city manager or city manager so that you can get a clear and full understanding of why we're requesting these dollars and what these dollars need to be used for, because they've been approved through previous council for these projects. So we're just trying to get reimbursed so we can move forward because we need the cash to fund
Right.
it.
Is it possible to that we can put that list so that the public can see that what we're voting on tonight and what is going toward?
If you would allow me to clean it up, because this was what I just kind of put
But yeah,
together.
whatever way, just that is made public so that they can know and have access.
Yes, sir.
Councilwoman Lucas Burke, you have the floor. Then Councilmember Moody.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Terry. And I guess our interest was the consultant gave us the figures that roughly added up to 20 million. And then we had the miscellaneous projects that were the other additional 20 million. So I guess we were looking for that list of the miscellaneous projects to equal the other 20 million or somewhere close in minus the fees for those amounts.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, and that's what we did. But I just want to remind you that these were bonds authorized. We've, okay, okay. Oh, these were bonds authorized. We got about $49 million worth of authorized and unissued. But we knew about 40 million needed to go toward these projects so that we can continue with the progress. And so I think when I provide the list and you can see the detail with the dollars, that's definitely should satisfy your request or your questions because the allocation is there.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Terry. And hold on, I think Councilmember Moody, you have a question, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hi, Ms. Terry. Hey, how are you?
Good.
When you do that list along with the dollar value, I think it would be good to indicate whether that project has been completed. And if it's not a percentage, in other words, is it 50% complete? In other words, give us the status. I heard Portside on there, and I take it that was some work to put that site back back where it was, or what is that about exactly? And if you don't have that now, that's fine. You can include that on the list.
Yes, I'll definitely show which projects are significantly complete so that we can have that identified with these and you'll know the status.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you again, Ms. Terry, for being available and making that presentation and answering the questions.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
We did have a motion and second.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other discussion that we need to have with council, my council colleagues? Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes. We do business, right? We've come to new business. Item 21. We've come to new business. Item 21-102, boards and commissions. Vice Mayor Barnes and Dr. Whitaker, are there any appointments to bring forward for council's consideration?
Yes. We have appointments. First, we're going to do Board of Zoning Appeals, Historic Preservation, Museum and Fine Arts Commission.
Can I get a motion and do I need a motion for that before we read it? Okay, read the list, then we'll get a motion. Okay, thank you, sir. Sorry.
So for Board of Zoning and Appeals, we're going to reappoint Mr. Curtis Gunn. For Historic Preservation, we're going to appoint Mr. James Overton. For Museum and Fine Arts Commission, Miss Stacy Price. And for Parks and Recreation, we're going to do Barry Randall.
Thank you, sir. Do we have a motion and a second?
Move for approval.
Second.
Madam Clerk, are we ready for the roll?
Yes. Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg,
Yes.
Mr. Moody,
Yes.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
Yes.
And
And Vice Mayor Barnes and Dr. Whitaker, are there any other items you need to submit or bring
Yes.
forward under
Yes.
boards and commissions?
yes, we have for consideration for Portsmouth Ports and Industrial Commission, we have 7 candidates. The first name is Amira Bertie, Arnett McSwain, Bracy Parr, Erlina Pena, Sarah Rogers Ghana, Angelia Allen, and Devonita Thomas.
Move
Thank
for
you,
approval.
sir.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have motion and second. Madam Clerk, are you ready to call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mr. Barnes,
Yes.
Mr. Battle,
Yes.
Mrs. Lucasberg,
No.
Mr. Moody,
No.
Dr. Whitaker,
Yes.
Mr. Woodard,
Yes.
Mayor Glover.
No.
This item passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Yes, sir.
We've now come to item 21-103, items submitted by council members. Council members, do you have any items to submit? Councilwoman Lucasberg, you have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. last meeting got away from us and I didn't get an opportunity to make my little presentation on Women's History Month. Being the only woman serving on the Portsmouth City Council, I would like to honor women not only in the city of Portsmouth, but across our nation. So here we go. National Women's History Month traces its roots back to March 8th, 1857, when women from various New York City factories staged a protest over poor working conditions. The first Women's Day celebration was in the United States in 1909. And more than 7 decades later, Congress in 1981 established National Women's History Week to be commemorated annually the second week of March. And in 1987, Congress expanded the week to a month, and every year since has passed a resolution designating March as Women's History Month. And as we celebrate Women's History Month this year, we reflect upon the advances women have made over the last decade. Women have increased their earnings and their education in the fields of occupation, in the fields of government, and have continued to be living longer than men. And even with the census report that Portsmouth shows, it shows that the U.S. Census report from a recent polling show that Portsmouth has a total population of 94,398 citizens, where 45,405 are male and 48,993 are women. So I would like for you to join me in applauding the women across our nation and our city who have used their beauty, their love, their determination, and their commitment to be active in their community. So thank you.
Thank you to all the ladies, for sure.
Mr. Mayor?
Dr. Whitaker, you have the
Yeah.
floor, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And also, in keeping with what Councilwoman Lucas Burke just presented, I want to thank her for bringing forward, I don't know if it came into fruition, but the recognition of Miss Augusta Baines, who on March the 15th celebrated her 105th anniversary, 105th birthday. And I want the record to show that we congratulate her. We love her. She's a retired teacher, graduate of North Carolina Central University, and has been an inspiration to me all of my life. She has been a lifelong member of originally First Baptist Penner's Point, which became New Bethel Baptist Church when it moved to Cavalier Manor. And she has been a solid supporter, encourager, and just want to let the citizens know that we have a 105-year-old, sharp, intelligent, still in her right mind, right spirit, and we love her and we congratulate her.
And Dr. Whitaker, thank you so much for that wonderful tribute to Miss Baines. And it was my honor. It was my honor to sign her proclamation.
Okay.
And much love and respect to her and her family. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Are there any other items submitted by council members? Councilman Woodard, sir, you have the floor.
Yeah, my question is directed to City Manager Pace, if he's available.
He is.
Okay. From the town hall meeting that I previously had with Senator Mark Warner, it was mentioned that the city of Portsmouth may be receiving $40 million from the ARP Act, that's American Rescue Plan. If there's no objection from council, I think that we should look into hazard pay for some of our city workers, well, all of our city workers, and also our sheriff department as well. I think it'd be something we look into as we receive those funds. Oh, and is there any elaboration that the city manager can do on this particular idea or whatnot, but I think it's something that we should look into going forward from council.
Councilman Woodard, here again, we still have not gotten any direct information relative to what these funds can be used for. Once we get
Okay.
that information, of course, we can share that back with you and figure out what kinds of things we can use those funds for. But you're right, they're one-time things and not recurring charges. So
Right.
we'll get that information back to you and council and let you know how we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's just something that we should really look into. Um, all our city workers and our sheriff department, they've been working on the front line for a while now, and it should be a great gesture from this council.
I would like to, if I can, make a note that here again, with the other funds that we got from CARES Act, we did do frontline payments to the sheriff's office, to our employees, and to everybody who was on the front line. So here again, it depends on what these funds will be used for. We can come back to council and let you all know, and then we can make some decisions and go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Pace.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Dr. Wood.
I did want to, for Mr. Pace, I did have just for clarification, because I received some inquiries. And thank you for the budget presentation that was presented. Question arose as to whether the 3% general wage increase also includes part-time. And I know in our document it said it does, but just so that the employees will know that that is included in the budget, could you confirm that?
Yeah, the 3% wage increase was for full-time employees. There is don't have it here in terms of what that all includes, but it was for full-time general wage employees.
Okay. And can you get back with council on what it would be to include the part-time workers as well?
I will do that.
All right.
Yeah.
The part-time and temporary those seasonal employees as well.
Sure. Everybody that we did not include, you want information as to what it would cost to include them.
What did you say, Mr. Pace?
Everybody that we did not include in terms of part-time, seasonal.
Okay.
You want to know what it would cost to include them.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get that to you.
All right. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
And if I may, I would like to add something to that in the same area. When Mr. Pace and his team gave the presentation the other day, one of the things that I was proud of that I know the councils before us had really sought to put in place when they looked at the wages that some of our employees were earning. We had people that have been here for quite a number of years who had not been earning a living wage. And it was very encouraging. I want to thank all of our past councils and our present council for being steadfast and committed to making sure that all of our workers would be able to receive a living wage as they do the work of our city government. And Mr. Pace, can you elaborate on that real quick? Because I think that's a big deal, because that reflects something, a goal that we had as a council, and we all worked, even though councils may have changed, we stayed focused on ensuring that our employees earned a living wage working for the city of Portsmouth.
Yes, Mayor. Just to add to what you're saying, yes, this has been a constant effort to ensure that our employees are moved to a living wage. I think this started some time ago relative to some requests from previous councils and approvals from them. And since that time, through several different administrations, we've been making sure that we're hiring people at that level. Also, since I've been appointed as interim city manager, we've been looking at some people that were below that number and changing their pay so that they come up to where they need to be to ensure that all of our people are making a living wage and earning at or above the $30,000 a year. All of that will be taking place, and everything will be concluded by the approval of this budget to ensure that everybody is doing that. So we want to set the standard to make sure that as a municipality, we were already doing that, so we can require that of other organizations and people that are hiring within the city of Portsmouth.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Moody, Councilmember Moody, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. On April the 8th, it'll be a 1 year anniversary that Portsmouth lost one of its outstanding young men. His name was Curtis Walton. Curtis, some of you may know, he served on our Youth Advisory Council when he was in school. He also came back and served an internship in our attorney's office, and I believe also in the city manager's office. Last April the 8th, Curtis was actually walking down the street exercising, and he got killed by a drive-by shooter. What I would like to do to remember Curtis and the others in the past year that have lost their life to senseless violence is to have a proclamation of remembrance, maybe in honor of Curtis Walton, but also contain the names of the others who we've lost due to violence. If there are no objections, I'd like for Ms. White to produce a proclamation of remembrance that you could share with us at the next opportunity, Mayor.
Councilmember Moody, thank you for that thoughtful recommendation, and we do always want to remember those individuals who was lost due to senseless gun violence. So, Ms. White, are you okay with putting something together in terms of a proclamation to honor this request?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We've now come to the point, we have another Vice Mayor Barnes.
I'll be very brief. I wanted to, I guess it's to the attorney and the city manager. I wanted to see if we can look into what other cities are doing as far as when it comes to paying boards, members of certain boards and commissions. I wanted us to look into that to see like what were they paying and which boards and commissions that they were paying. Because I would be interested in our city doing something along the lines of that as well, if there's no objection from council.
Are you referring to paying citizens who serve on boards and commissions, sir?
Like a monthly stipend. It's kind of, some of the other cities I saw were doing that. So I wanted us to look into that as well to see which ones that they were paying and also what they were paying to see if we can get along the lines of that as well. If that's no objection from council.
Are my colleagues, is everybody okay with researching that information and bringing it back for consideration?
Yes.
Researching it, yes.
Okay, researching it.
Research, yes.
Mr. Pace?
We got it.
Thank you, sir.
We have now come to the point of pending items, report on pending items. Mr. Pace, are there any pending items?
Mayor, there are no pending items.
Next up is item 21-105, our non-agenda speakers. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yes, sir. Your first speaker is Mr. Jonathan Benton.
Mr. Benton, are you here, sir?
Yes, right.
Mr. Benton?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
You have 5 minutes, Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and City Council members. Jonathan Benton. I spoke to you all on February 22nd, City Council meeting concerning a stop sign at the corner of Bingham Drive and Stamford Road. The stop sign was replaced with a yield sign. expressed my concern with the safety of this intersection before the sign was changed. I'm even more concerned now. The near miss incidents seem to be a lot more frequent than they were prior to the sign being changed. Also, at the end of my comments, one of the city council members asked that the city manager respond to council via email or at the next city council meeting. And neither one of those seems to have happened. At least I haven't heard anything back from anybody about it. So I'm just reminding everybody of that and hoping to get an answer back. Also, one of the reasons that was stated to the local media for changing this sign was that there was no accidents at the intersection. On December 24th, there was in fact an accident. I do have video of that accident I've been able to pull. The police did respond to the accident. It's concerning me that the police department nor city officials seem to have a record of this accident. And if you don't have a record, it couldn't have been used to make the decision to remove the sign. So, in conclusion here, that the sign has been changed. It has increased the risk of an accident at this intersection. It hasn't made anything safer in the neighborhood. It seems to have given motorists the impression that this intersection is safe and they don't need to stop or even slow down anymore. I've seen an increased number of cars coming through, cutting through from High Street down to West Norfolk Road. I've talked to some of the neighbors, and I've heard from some of the other neighbors that they're not happy about this sign being changed and think it was a bad idea as well. I really want to see the sign put back up. I want to see law enforcement encouraged to monitor the sign, and I'm asking that you guys take action before somebody gets hurt. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it, and I'll close with that.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, are there any other speakers?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mark Godelda-Gutrovsky.
Good evening again.
Mr. Yatrovsky, you have 5 minutes, sir.
Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, council members, and neighbors. 2 years ago last month, at the council retreat, our utilities director laid out some disturbing and vital information for council to absorb. Subsequent to that retreat, the topic of mandated improvements in our water and sewer systems were discussed in a couple of work sessions and as part of the budget process last year. I was disappointed in yesterday's budget presentation to see that the recommended increases for the utility rates were 5% rather than a higher rate, which some would find painful, but not as painful as having to do makeup rate increases farther down the road. In one of the presentations, there were double-digit increases projected if we kick the can on this process. And we really don't have that option. These are mandated improvements coming from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and the Environmental Protection Agency. Change in administration is not going to get us off the hook for them. We are not alone. consumer reports indicated that localities all across the country are suffering the effects of using antique water and sewer infrastructure. And as these vital parts of our city service deteriorate over time, like everything, it becomes costlier and costlier to repair and ultimately replace them. So I want to urge you to move forward with the 9% increase that was proposed last year. You forestalled it for 6 months because of the COVID economic dislocations in the last fiscal year. But we're not doing ourselves a favor by doing so. And for those people who are suffering economic distress still because of the economic disruptions that the pandemic has brought about, I would say we need to have a liberal relief program for the folks who are in distress to carry us through until the economy rebounds. But there are a great many people in this city, my wife and myself among them, who have suffered no dislocation in terms of economic activity. That's because we don't punch time clocks anymore. The federal government continues to send out our Social Security checks every month. Our retirement plans continue to send out payments to us. And for better or for worse, a large portion of the citizenry in Portsmouth is situated similarly to us. So you really need to do what's necessary to ensure that we protect these assets and that we do not allow them to deteriorate so people suffer the kinds of pain when severe weather impacts systems that are already weakened by age. Texas and Mississippi come immediately to mind as places where bad weather has aggravated the aging of the infrastructure. We need to keep up, and we need to be steady in going forward. Thank you very much.
No, sir.
Council members, are there any other,
You're muted, Mayor.
thank you, sir. Council members, are there any other items to present before council? Seeing no additional business for consideration, our meeting is adjourned. Enjoy your week, gentlemen and lady.
Good evening.